So I would like to welcome everyone to the very first episode of the second season of The Talk, brought to you by the Women Development Organization, WDO. Today, we're diving into a topic that's both timely and critical: labor, exploitation, and ethical sourcing in the fashion industry. We'll be uncovering some of the harsh realities behind our clothing and discussing how each of us can advocate for a fairer, more sustainable future in fashion. Joining us today is a true pioneer in sustainable fashion, the CEO of Women Innovation Foundation, Walid Osman. With over 20 years of experience in communication, advocacy, and sustainable development, he has dedicated his career to creating a more ethical and responsible fashion industry. He'll share his insights on labor rights, ethical sourcing, and how we can all make a difference through our choices. I would like to thank you, Walid, first of all, for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. So to start, could you please give us an overview of what labor exploitation means in the context of the fashion industry?
Yeah, well, labor exploitation is standard, in all industries, but it always refers to unsafe working environments. It refers to denying fair wages. It refers to poor working conditions, discrimination, or like gender-based discrimination, or the main problem with the fashion industry is that usually, you have the demand for cheap fashion is high, so the market automatically tries to fulfill this demand, and to fulfill this demand, they have to practice such violations in order to meet the market demands of cheap fashion garments. So the problem that you have to always think, if you're buying this $5 T-shirt, do you think really that the person who did it was paid fairly? Probably not. So yeah, so that's the case with the fashion industry. Also, the other specific thing is that usually the fast fashion industry usually produces in countries where labor cost is low, or where they employ a lot of migrants who have no other option than to work there. So it's always an industry of so many violations. Yeah.
So from my own understanding, I believe also one of the issues is like fast fashion. So I'd like to ask, from your point of view and from your experience, your vast experience in this field, why do you think this issue is especially so pervasive in fast fashion? And do you think there are specific like business models or practices that contribute to, this massive issue?
Yeah, well, fast fashion is a business model. So you even have now, they refer to ultra fast fashion, which refers to examples like Shein, or there are some brands that especially with the digital shopping and digital marketing, and so you have a lot of online marketplaces that actually they have new trends every day. They don't have like a full season in the spring season. They have actually like an everyday season. Yeah, so they produce in very big quantities. They don't really produce responsibly, and in order to launch a new product every day, you're probably not really producing them, not even in good design and not in good quality. And of course, the person who pays the cost of this is the worker. Yeah. So if you're talking about business models, you have the fast fashion model, which refers to all the high street brands that we see every day, and then we have the ultra fast fashion that emerged maybe with the continuous digital transformation, and then you have the slow fashion, which is the recommended one. Yeah.
So this is something that you just touched on very briefly. So the vast majority of garment workers and workers in the fashion industry tend to be women. So you touched that, there's low wages, or maybe the environments are not the safest. Could you please shed a little bit more light on the unique challenges that they face, especially as women, specifically related to their wages, safety, working conditions?
Yeah. Of course, yeah. I mean, women in this industry specifically, I mean, yes, they could be dominating the industry in terms of employment, but then you would always have the main problem is that their bosses are men. Of course, they get exposed to a lot of harassment. Like, I mean, I'm speaking sexual harassment. We're talking about like they don't really move up in their career. They just remain doing this blue collar job, but probably their bosses who are taking the decisions are not female. They're usually male. So of course this has a lot of consequences because like usually women in this in the fast fashion model they are usually working excess hours. I mean, they're not really working the 40-hour per week standard. So of course, when they overwork, this has so many drawbacks on their children, for example. So and of course, they don't have like a childcare support or anything. So it has a lot of disadvantages for women specifically. Yeah.
So do you think there may be a reason why the vast majority of, the lower tiers of like the fashion industry tend to be predominantly women and like, the higher level jobs and leadership positions are mostly male? Do you think there's a specific reason for this?
Well, I think it's not related really to the exploitation thing, but I think it's related to yeah. I mean, usually you have a higher probability of finding a woman who can sue than a man. So of course you have so. Yeah, so usually like yeah, men don't really prefer to work in this industry in terms of like the suing, the beating, and so on. So it's dominated by women, but then the problem is always the management. You don't have women who are promoted to top management positions. Yeah.
Okay. And do you think some of these challenges may be alleviated if women were to be in higher positions, or do you think that it would maybe stay in the same kind of route because of how fast fashion or ultra fast fashion works?
Well, I think it's mainly it has to do with the ownership. It's not really the management because I mean the owner of this fast fashion company he or she they want to keep it this way because this is how they make money. So I don't think that gender is really an issue here. It's about really the greediness of the owners.
Okay. So next I would like to talk about ethical sourcing. It's becoming a more trending, it's gaining traction, especially with, I believe, the newer generations. But can you explain what it actually means in practice? How can companies integrate ethical sourcing into their supply chains?
Well, I mean, the first thing, I mean, if you're talking about labor practices, fair labor practices are part of the ethical sourcing, because I mean, this is actually the number one thing that comes to mind when we're talking about ethical sourcing. Second thing would be the materials that you use. I mean, a lot of people now they stopped using. I mean, a lot of sustainable fashion industry is avoiding using materials like polyester, for example. And there's like a trend of using natural materials like organic cotton or linen. So I would say the materials you're using in the garments is one thing. The other thing is, of course, sustainable packaging. Because packaging, I mean, you just have to think about how many garments are ordered via Amazon every day across the globe, and how many paper boxes are being sent every day with them, and sometimes they're plastic packaging and so on. So of course, packaging is a major contributor to the environmental aspect of the fast fashion industry. There's also like there are also ways to prove to your audience that you're operating ethically through certifications and or like these quality seals. The other thing is also like it has to do with the animal welfare. Of course, this may be a little bit advanced for the region, but I mean, making sure that no animals were harmed when these products were produced, and especially like in the cosmetic industry and so on.
Okay.
Yeah.
So can you tell me that because, it has been gaining traction and the idea of trying to buy in a way that's, ethical,
Mhm.
what are the most impactful ways that brands have responded to this issue?
Well, I mean, you can see a brand like H&M, for example. It's a fast fashion brand, and then they introduce the sustainable or like a conscious line. Of course, I don't really believe that it's 100% conscious, but I would say that the positive aspect of it is that it raises awareness to people who go to H&M, that they understand that there is a difference between slow fashion and fast fashion, or like ethical fashion and non-ethical fashion. So this is, I mean, this is the classic example. But I mean, you have a lot of brands that are not very well known that do have such practices. I mean, even in Egypt, we have local brands that are operating very sustainably, and they're even like producing for bigger brands abroad. So yeah, so there are lots of positive practices that were done before. The other thing is that I think it has to do more with the consumer, because like at the end of the day, fashion is demand driven. It's not yeah, it's fashion companies are trying to supply people with what they really want or what they really need. So if people start boycotting fast fashion companies, I mean, this is already like beginning the trend, and we have to also remember that the first thing that triggered this so-called fashion revolution was in 2013, when this factory in Bangladesh collapsed, which was a very tragic accident. And I remember at that time I was residing in Germany, and then there were lots of demonstrations calling for boycotting Primark, because Primark is one of the biggest brands that were producing in Bangladesh, and I think they were also producing in this specific factory. So I think it has to do with the consumer much more than it has to do with the supplier.
So I'm going off of what you touched on here with like how consumers do influence how brands will respond in order to, become more ethical.
Yeah.
So my follow-up is that, as consumers, maybe we don't always see the full story behind, the clothing item or the garment.
Mm.
So how would you encourage people to become more responsible consumers or more responsible shoppers?
Yeah, well, I would say that I mean, you can't really encourage someone to do this. I mean, they have to understand or like be aware of the problem first, and then it's their choice whether to encourage the cheap fast fashion, or encourage the more ethical slow fashion. So I mean, there were so many initiatives were done. Like that there are some applications now, like where you can download a mobile application that actually tells you how this brand produces their products. Like it's I think it's they refer to it as who produced my clothes. Yeah, and this was the tagline of the fashion revolution, and of course, I mean, there are many practices that you can do, like buying secondhand or vintage garments. There is I mean, you can just search over the internet, like who's producing sustainably, who's producing ethically, who's and who is not, and you just avoid whoever is not really ethical. But you really have to be convinced first to follow this. And I can see that the trend was I mean, the trend was able to grow in developed countries. If you go to Sweden, if you go to Germany, if you go to everyone is aware about the topic. Everyone understands what sustainable fashion is, and even if you want to export to Germany now, the first thing they ask about is sustainability. If you're exporting ready-made garments. So there's also like about repairing your clothes, washing your clothes responsibly. Yeah. Yeah, I think there are many things you can do. There's also like the fashion transparency index. This was another initiative that actually it evaluates all the brands that all the fashion brands, and they give them like a percentage, and they tell you like this brand is 98% transparent. So they're really open about their production process, and it has nothing to do with luxury fashion it's not really about the price, because you can find like two companies that are luxury fashion brands, and they have like a very extreme attitude towards the sustainability. So for example, you have like a brand like Gucci is scored 98% transparent on the fashion transparency index, and a brand like Tom Ford scored like 2%. So it doesn't. I mean, it doesn't mean really that luxury is sustainable. Yeah.
Okay, so you did kind of touch on it, and I want to go back to it. So you mentioned that in developed countries, especially, consumers do care. This is something that they look for. The countries themselves kind of help regulate this kind of, practice of ethical sourcing in garments. What I'm noticing is, for example, in the region, people may not be aware that ethical sourcing or this whole thing is even an issue. I'll see people avoiding certain brands for political reasons, but I won't see them avoiding certain brands because it's bad for the environment or you don't know how you got these clothes. So how do we make the public, especially in the region, aware that such an issue even exists, that this is something that they should care about?
Well, there are two aspects in this topic. I mean, the first aspect is the financial aspect. I mean, that if you have people in the Middle East are probably like earning much less than people in Europe, so they don't really have the luxury of choosing a more expensive product that is more environmentally friendly. At the same time, you have a completely different problem is that I don't feel that in the Middle East you have enough awareness about environmental issues. I mean, I don't feel that people even discuss. I mean, apart from sustainable fashion, I mean, the issue of environmental awareness is not really a topic of interest for the majority, I would say. But maybe like a good solution would be to work on the awareness of citizens on environmental issues. Yeah.
Okay. And do you believe that eventually should the citizens themselves actually care more, do you think this would actually lead to like policy changes or, the countries as like on a governmental level starting to then regulate what is actually ethically sourced, actually figuring out like, okay, the fabric coming into the country is actually coming from reputable places, because we're not just talking about the garments themselves, we're talking about the actual, raw materials.
Yeah.
I think eventually we can actually reach this point.
Yeah, well, I think it has to do with the people themselves. If people demand sustainable fashion, then automatically the market is going to change. At the same time, if you're talking about the policy level of governments, then I mean the governments, if the governments are aware that people are buying cheap fast fashion products because they can't afford it, then the government is probably likely to keep it this way because I mean they don't want So then, okay, like you can only buy sustainable fashion, and fast fashion is not allowed to be imported or produced or whatever, when the people cannot even afford it. So just like making the lives of citizens more difficult. So this is not really a likely scenario to happen. Yeah.
Okay, so kind of going on the same thread, do you think there are like certain certifications or labels that can like signal fair labor practices worldwide and on a local level?
Yeah, well, I mean, there is the fair trade certification, and the fair trade certification is actually, I mean, it ensures that whoever made the product you're buying was paid fairly and was working in a safe environment. And the fair trade certification is actually for so many products. I mean, it's not only for the fashion industry. The other certification is the GOTS. The GOTS is it stands for the Global Organic Textile Standard, which actually proves that your material was came from an organic source, because you have. But then, yeah, then something like GOTS is too complicated, because then Egypt is, for example, one of the most famous producers of cotton, but not all the cotton that is grown in Egypt is organic. But then you ask yourself, okay, like if you want to grow organic cotton in Egypt, is this more sustainable or not? There's an argument that tells you like, no, it's not more sustainable because it actually needs more water. So in a country that has water scarcity like Egypt, then is this really like the better option or not? I mean, there isn't really like a specific barrier, or like I mean, like deciding if this is sustainable or not. I mean, it's not really always very easy, because you can go for a polyester option that turns out to be more sustainable than a cotton option. Yeah, so it's there isn't really like a yes or no. So you just have to I mean, to be responsible in your practices, but you can't really like put these very strict rules like, no, I'm not going to buy any polyester. No, I'm not going to buy any material that's not organic. So it's about finding like the equation that gives you a best practice in the industry you're in. So.
Okay, going off of that, so that is, for example, something I've faced difficulty in as
Mhm.
a consumer. So, for example, I'll be trying to buy from a local brand, which is still a startup. They don't have that much information, and there'll be no information on their website as to their practices. So, I will reach out to them, hey, your products or your raw materials, your fabrics, where do you get them from? So like sometimes, they won't be able to answer me. Other times it's, sourced from China and then shipped across the globe to Egypt. And, that also contributes to the whole issue of, um, being bad for the environment. So how can I, as a consumer, not only verify like the ethical standard that they're actually being honest with me, but also how can I find that like middle ground of like, okay, organic cotton in Egypt versus like, okay, maybe a polyester will be better for the environment. How can I, as a consumer, like, reach that place where I can confidently make good choices?
Well, first of all, I think if you're buying from a brand that tells you I'm sustainable, I mean, they have to be aware that they have to be transparent. If they're not transparent, then they're probably hiding something. Yeah. So the first thing about being or like having a sustainable brand is providing the information that I mean, like informing the consumer about how you sourced your raw materials and how you produce them and so on. So, but the first thing I would do if I ask someone how was this product produced, or like what's the source of this fabric, and then they tell me I don't know, or they don't want to tell me, then I would automatically Yeah, I suspect that that they're not really sustainable. They're just using sustainability as a market as a marketing approach, but they're not really sustainable. Yeah.
So
So I mean, if the brand is actually sustainable, they will be very transparent about how they're produced, and you can always we have very good examples locally that are very open about how they source their materials, how they produce their materials, and so on. And you can find all the information on their websites. So it's yeah, I think it depends on the transparency of the company itself.
okay, so kind of touching on that whole idea of transparency, a lot of the issues I've noticed, especially nowadays, because sustainable fashion is becoming more of a hot topic, you have the whole idea of greenwashing. So, I will see, I'll go into, let's say, H&M, as using your previous example, and I'll find a pair of jeans and it'll say, it's better for the environment or whatever their conscience brand is. But then you actually like look at the tag and it'll say may use recycled cotton, but it won't actually tell you if it actually does use recycled cotton or like what the percentages is. It'll just be like may. So how can I as a consumer, avoid the whole greenwashing tactics and the whole marketing behind it? Because, it is like a hot term right now and it's what they use to try to sell. Because at the end of the day, most of their, goal is to sell products. So how do I avoid falling for this?
It's exactly like what the example that you just said. I mean, if you're buying a jeans from H&M and you read what's written on it and then they tell you that it may have used recycled cotton, well then I automatically would understand that there's something wrong. Yeah, or I mean, or you would automatically understand that this is just a part of their marketing. It's not really like sustainable or it's not really recycled. But then usually like you'll find sustainability more embedded in underground brands. I mean, because I mean those brands are not really interested in investing in marketing and paying a lot of money on advertising and photo shoots and so on. And they're actually like more concerned about their community, or they're concerned about their quality. But usually, if I tell you like, oh, I'm sustainable, I'm sustainable, I'm probably just building a fake image of myself. So I think just the consumer needs to do an extra effort in the research, maybe yeah, the pre-purchase research, I would say, yeah. So this is what makes a difference.
So essentially, we just have, as consumers, we have to be more aware and more,
Yeah,
interested in acting.
definitely. Yeah. Yeah.
So I would like to kind of go back to labor exploitation because, sustainable fashion is not just, looking at what my garment is made of, but it's actually like the practices used for me to receive this product at the end of the day.
Mhm.
So I would like to know, with your experience and like in your view, what role will technology and innovation play in tackling labor exploitation in fashion?
Yeah, well, I think I already referred to this when I mentioned the mobile applications that tell you about the brand that you're buying, whether it's sustainable or not. So I mean, this is a technological innovation, I would say, because I mean, maybe 10 years ago you didn't have such a thing. So technology is really playing a role in informing the consumer. Yeah. So maybe I will have like an AI fashion assistant who can yeah, assist me in the future when I'm buying anything. They would locate me that I'm in H&M right now, and they would know that what kind of product am I buying. Yeah, maybe this is the direction. I mean, it has to do mainly with information. The other thing about technology is maybe the innovation of new materials, new raw materials that could be used. I remember I was asked to judge in this national competition of Enactus, which like university students they like propose like their projects. in front of like a very big jury, and we saw this team who actually like created like a way to have like zero waste from banana trees, because banana trees they're very polluting, because when you grow the tree, you only get like like bananas once, and then you have to take it off, and then the rest of the tree is just waste. And this waste has a lot of environmental consequences that are not very pleasant. So they actually came up with a way of transforming the waste of the banana trees into flour that you can eat. Yeah. And actually and they invented like some sort of a device that can actually transform the fibers into like like a textile material. Yeah. And then this option that they presented was like a zero waste, like you get zero waste from the banana tree. So this is the kind of innovation that we're expecting. Like we have now the leather that's extracted from pineapples, for example. It's of course it's not natural leather. It's plant-based leather that's from pineapples. You have the bananas are used in producing textiles too. So you have a lot of I'm sure like there are endless possibilities. I heard about sugar cane too, because they have a lot of sugar cane in Egypt. So sugar cane, of course, they have it has like a very strong fiber, so it could be utilized in textile innovation, I would say. Yeah.
Okay, so that's a very interesting point that, there are new materials, or, not even new materials, it's existing materials that people are looking at as, a better alternative to what we currently have. So I have kind of like I'm backtracking now. So like we talked about how technology does help with like, for example, you can have like an AI assistant who will tell you, you're in this store, this would be the correct choice to make, like if you want to be sustainable. So on the other end of it, like people do use the internet and like social media to bring awareness. So like, when you brought the example of like that factory in Bangladesh that it collapsed, and like there were lots of deaths, unfortunately. And so that brought like a very like wide public eye on this issue. And like every so often, like there will be something that happens and then everyone talks about it, and like it brings more awareness. So I remember, as a child, like we would hear about Nike, or we would hear about Adidas and like their exploitation of child labor, for example, and like how, we should avoid these brands because of their practices. And nowadays, like I'm seeing a lot of like, don't buy from Shein because they do 1, 2, and 3, and 4. Do you think that some brands use social media to like try to hide what they're doing? Like, if there's certain talk, then they'll do something else to counteract it and like try to hide what they're doing?
Well, of course, I'm sure a lot of people, a lot of companies do this. I mean, they hide, and this is why the transparency index is a very effective tool. And the thing is, the way to make things easier. I mean, there are these certifications, like I mentioned, like the fair trade certification, the GOTS certification. There's also like the Ecotext. There's a B Corp. I mean, there are several certifications in the textile industry, and automatically as a consumer, if you see that they have the certification, then you could be 100% sure that this brand is offering you a sustainable product. The only problem with the certifications is that they're very expensive to acquire. So for example, I think a brand getting the certification would probably pay like $6,000 every 1 or 2 years I mean, because they have to make this monitoring of the company and evaluate their practices and so on. So they have to do it like every couple of years, and then so of course, like for very small brands that are intending to launch a sustainable brand, they cannot really afford to pay $6,000 every 2 years to get just one certification. And I'm talking just one. So maybe if I get the GOTS, it means that yes, I'm certified in offering organic materials, but maybe I have labor exploitation hiding. Yeah. So I mean, in order to get like so many certifications, it's not really a practical thing for startups and even for SMEs, I would say. I mean, one thing that is an alternative for this is to actually if you're a small brand, then you can actually go produce your garments at a factory that is certified. So, for example, we have a factory in Egypt that has existed for 120 years maybe, and they have the GOTS certification, for example. So, if you want to produce, if if the sustainable aspect of your brand is about the materials that you're using, then you can go and produce your garments there, and then you would be able to fulfill this sustainable aspect of your brand, because you cannot be sustainable in everything. I mean, I would say that maybe like a good step for small brands is to just start by being ethical. Ethical as in they pay like proper wages. They offer a decent working environment for the workers. If they can do this, then this is a very good start. Yeah. And then they can add more elements of sustainability in the future. They don't have to be sustainable in everything, because there is no such thing as sustainable in everything. If a fashion brand tells you that I'm sustainable, like I'm 100% sustainable, you probably know that this is nonsense. So you don't really have to believe this. Yeah.
So you kind of touched on this right now, but what do you think are like the long-term issues and therefore like the changes that are necessary in the industry, and how do you think that the fashion industry as a whole is already contributing to this?
As I said before, I think it really has to do with the consumer, because like at the end of the day, the consumer is the decision maker. I mean, you are deciding what to buy for yourself. So if you're buying fast fashion today, you're just encouraging slow fashion companies to shut down, and you're encouraging fast fashion to continue. So I think the primary solution for the issue is to start with the consumer, and like make people aware about sustainable fashion, and actually to make people aware about the environmental drawbacks of the industry, because I mean the fashion and textile industry is the third most polluting industry in the world. I think there's data that mentions that every second you have one complete truck of textile is being burnt or being thrown into the sea, or being buried or whatever. Yeah. Every second. So probably in the call we were having right now, we're talking about maybe what 360 trucks were burnt in the past probably half an hour. Yeah. So I guess so. I didn't do the calculation, but approximately. And the thing is, like the carbon emissions that result from the fashion industry is actually equivalent to the shipping and I think shipping and flights to combined. Yeah, if you combine the carbon emissions of flights and ships all over the world, both of them would be equivalent to the fashion industry. So yeah, you can imagine how much it contributes to damaging the environment. Yeah.
So like this is an extremely important point that you bring up, and like we touched earlier about how, you know, in developed countries they do care a little bit more, but then I also see the argument of it's too expensive, or it's a very privileged thing to be looking at sustainable fashion or slow fashion, because only certain kinds of people are able to afford slow fashion, or are able to afford the brands that are able to be more transparent, or can afford all the certifications, or can afford to source their raw materials from a sustainable place, or have a factory with fair wages and like fair practices. So we already touched on how in certain countries maybe the population as a whole cannot afford to purchase better, more sustainable fashion. But how do you, for example, convince the populations that already have the resources or like the monetary means in order to be able to afford better fashion? They just will use other excuses not to.
Yeah, well, the thing is, the price point of the product has to do with the quantity. It's all about how much you're producing. This is what determines your price, or like the most important price determinant, I would say. So for example, if I have a sustainable fashion brand and I'm producing like 50 pieces every season, yeah, because like my market is very niche. If I was able to sell the 50 this season, then probably next year next season I'll be producing 100. Yeah, and then if I manage to sell them all, then I'll be selling for 100, selling for 150. And as I do this, my price is getting lower because the more demand there is, the more I'm selling, and the more I'll be able to have like a lower price point. So I would say that the main reason why sustainable fashion is expensive is that it is a niche product that I mean not a lot of people buy it, so it's already like a limited supply. There's limited supply, so that's why it's very expensive. But then if all the cotton that we have is the organic cotton now, then okay, then there is no other alternative to organic cotton. So everyone will have, even the galabiyas of the people in the very poor villages will be made of organic cotton. If the whole industry shifted I mean, the agricultural industry itself shifted to organic cotton instead of the regular one. So yeah.
I do genuinely hope that we do get to a point where you can only source, sustainable, raw materials, and like you can only get sustainable garments or slow fashion garments, and we could actually get to that place. But going on, like for the future, because we're looking at the future now, what advice would you have for young fashion designers or entrepreneurs who are in the fashion industry who want to create sustainable and ethical fashion brands?
There are many things that they can do. I mean, the very first step to do is actually to define their purpose or their mission. I mean, this is the first thing. I mean, like they have to define they have like to create their own definition of sustainability. Yeah. So it's just as I was telling you right now, if I'm a fashion brand that's launching right now, the first thing I would do is to make sure that I'm ethical. And I don't really have to produce only from organic cotton or from linen. It's could be a bit complicated and not really feasible, but the first thing I would do is to really like have my own definition of what sustainability is, because as I said, I mean there is no such thing as 100% sustainable. You cannot be sustainable in everything. I mean, at the end of the day, you will be consuming some sort of energy in order to move your stuff from here to there. But are you using like the a gas, like a gas car or like an electric car? I mean, if you don't have electric cars in the country you're in, so what can you do? I mean, you can't be a sustainable brand if you, so it's so I think, I mean, you don't really have to put so many red lines. You have to be like quite relaxed about it. You just have to make sure that you're doing the best practice in whatever step you are in the business. I mean, if you're producing packaging, yeah, well, I mean, just make sure that that the option you go for is I mean, the most sustainable packaging that fits your brand. Because sometimes, if maybe like a craft paper does not really look very luxurious. So if you're a luxurious fashion brand, should you really use craft paper and then you would lose the luxury part, or should you use maybe like linen bags that you can use 100 times? They're more expensive than craft paper, yes, but then maybe you can use linen bags that would last actually a lifetime. So yeah, it's very tricky. I mean, taking decisions that are sustainable are like choosing between two options that are both sustainable, but like which one is more sustainable? You don't really have to exert so much effort in taking the decision. Just like do the decision that's both sustainable and would give the maximum benefit to your brand. So this is my advice.
Okay, so I do like the example of like how even packaging will impact it, or what kind of car you use. Like it'll be like tiny little things that add up. So like at the end of the day, you have to make your choices as to, where you want to like cross lines or where you want to, you cut out certain things. But my follow-up to that would be, do you think the responsibility falls more on the consumer or on like the actual fashion brands to be more ethical and more sustainable?
I think it falls under both of them. I remember that this has nothing to do with fashion, but I remember there was a supermarket in Cairo that started like packaging. I mean, since they launched, they were packaging in craft paper. And this was the first supermarket to do so. And then, I mean, although the supermarket was more expensive than all other supermarkets, I decided to buy from there. And then by time they started going back to the normal plastic bags, yeah. So I simply stopped buying from there because I mean the only reason I was paying this price difference was that I felt they were responsible in their packaging, and then after they stopped doing this, I said they lost a client. So so that's the thing. I mean, when you're saying that I'm sustainable, or like you're practicing sustainability in your business, you're actually attracting a certain consumer. Yeah. You cannot really fool this consumer, because if this consumer is buying from you, then the consumer is aware whether you're sustainable or not. So it's not like, okay, yeah, just like tell them that you're sustainable at the beginning, and just like act sustainable at the beginning, and then they will just be loyal to you, and then do whatever you want later. I mean, I think that we as consumers, we need to be very careful before we make any purchase, because this is because we are encouraging the practices in the business, and we can stop malpractices in the same business. So the first thing is starting by ourselves, I would say, because whatever we decide will affect the businesses to decide whether to go for sustainable products, or just remain irresponsible. So.
So I definitely agree that, at the end of the day, we as consumers do vote with our money. Where our money goes kind of influences brands to go in certain directions, especially if they see like a massive drop in sales, and then, maybe they'll look at themselves and reflect and be like, okay, we can make these changes in order to bring back our consumers. But do you think that eventually, voting with our money, we'll say, will influence brands that are like ultra fast fashion? Do you think that eventually we can, as consumers, force them to change their practices?
I think we can, and the proof of this is H&M. I mean, the fact that they decided to launch a sustainable line, or like a sustainable collection, means that they understand, they notice that the market is changing, and they feel that in order to survive in their business, they have to make this shift. And this is something that we should be aware of if we're I mean like fashion designers or fashion producers. They need to be aware of this because I think from starting 2030, I mean like there will be very strict regulations in the EU and North America when it comes to importing textiles. So I think starting to 2030, you cannot really produce, you cannot really export any products that are not sustainable in terms of like material, like so I mean, so if you use polyester, for example, you have to use recycled polyester. You can't just use like a new polyester anymore, starting 2030. So because actually with polyester specifically, I mean, there are many products that you cannot do unless you have polyester. So it's better probably to recycle the existing polyester instead of producing new one. So I think yeah, adding such regulations like trade regulations already contributes a lot to changing the global industry and like upgrading it to a more sustainable one.
I think that's a very good point, actually. And I hope that, you know, it's not just Europe and North America that's on that list by 2030 of like having such strict regulations for textiles and like importing of garments and everything. I really do hope that this change is on a regional level here and also like worldwide, just because I do think this would completely change the fashion industry as a whole in terms of sustainability. As we're nearing the end of the episode, I will give everyone, all guests, a chance to ask any questions if they would like. You may type them in the chat box or raise your hand. But in the meantime, I do have another question for you, a little more technical on like the fashion design side. So one of the main reasons why we have ultra fast fashion and why it's an issue now is because, you know, you've got social media and like TikToks, and you've got people doing clothing hauls like every other day, and like they feel like they have to have new outfits for every single video that they appear in, and like they'll do like 20 videos a day, for example. Do you think that maybe we can change this from the side of like fashion designers? Maybe if like they stop designing so many new things, would this influence customers? Or do you think, you know, if these fashion influencers, we'll call them, they're the ones who take that step to, you know, repeat outfits, for example, or, you know, stop producing so many haul videos, or stop, you know, trying to influence people to constantly buy. Where do you think like that responsibility
Yeah, well, I
falls?
think it's a very good point that you raised because that there is the design element of sustainability. I mean, you can design something that's sustainable apart from the material that you're using. I mean, you can, for example, the trend that we see now with sustainable fashion is to have like a fashion garment that's probably like with a short sleeve, and then you have like a zipper that makes it into a long sleeve one, and then and like with the women's dresses, so you have like a very long dress that has a zipper, and then you can shorten it, so you can wear it in summer, you can wear it in winter, you can wear it in different occasions, and so on. So the design element has, of course, like has a very big role to play. The other thing about the designing products that are, I mean, that have multiple uses is actually to produce to produce designs that are actually timeless, not really like follow like a very eccentric trend that will last this season and then die afterwards, because this is then you're sure that this garment is going to be transformed into waste by the end of the season. So you don't really want such a such practice. So the more timeless you are, and maybe probably like even the more neutral you are with coloring, yeah, because like with the colors, if they're like, oh, red is so in now, so everyone goes to buy red, and then the next season it's green, so they throw all the red away. So it's I mean like but even if you have something that's black and white or beige or gray, you will probably wear it very frequently. You're not very likely to throw it away because of its color. Yeah. So color has an important role to play also in a sense. Yeah.
So I appreciate that you touched on the idea of like timeless fashion because it feels like back in like the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, there was like a decade cycle for fashion. Like it was so slow. And now it feels like trends don't even last for a full
Yeah.
season. Like
Yeah.
within like 2, 3 weeks, we're onto something new, we're onto new designs. And then you've got like the ultra fast fashion design, like fashion brands who are, very quick with it and can like, produce these mass amounts. So do you think these like micro trends that occur, where do you think that responsibility lies? Do you think it's like the ultra fast fashion brands that encourage this, or do you think maybe it's the consumers themselves who are like,
It's the consumers, of course. It's the consumers, and it's only the consumers because it's the consumers who decided to shift from the model that you just mentioned in the 30s and 40s, the very slow model, to the trends that we have today, like the $5 T-shirt at Primark. Yeah. So it's the consumers who decide. So I think I mean, if you as I said before, I mean, if you just start by yourself and just, I mean, the consumer behavior is what defines the strategy of the business. Yeah. So, I mean, all businesses are always looking for what consumers want and what they demand, and they respond accordingly. So, if you are very strict in demanding like a slow fashion model, then the fast fashion model is going to diminish by time. Yeah.
okay. And to kind of touch back on how you mentioned that one of the ways we can make sure that our clothes last is by choosing, for example, neutral colors, picking styles that are timeless, that, will not go out of fashion when a season is over. Is there a way to help consumers choose a piece that will actually last? Because a lot of the issues now with ultra fast fashion is it's like very cheaply made, the stitching will fall apart, or the material might not be the best, and it might like get holes in it after 2 washes. So, what advice do you have for consumers to choose better pieces that will actually last them?
Well, I think if you have like a good level of awareness as a consumer, you would be able to tell if this fabric is going to last long or not. Yeah. You can also read read about the fabric that you're buying to understand, like, is it more polyester, is it more cotton, is it more linen, and you can feel the fabric, and you can tell whether it's high quality or not. In terms of design, of course, I mean, this is I would say it has to do with some sort of a sense, because I think if you're wearing just a plain white T-shirt, I mean, as a man, I mean, it was never really like out of fashion to wear a plain white T-shirt or a plain black T-shirt. Yeah. So I know that I'm safe as long as I'm wearing like a white shirt right now. So it's not really likely that white goes out of fashion, and then I can't really wear my white shirts anymore, and I have to wear green shirts, for example. Like it's not really likely to happen. So there are, I mean, yeah, I mean, there are like indicators that you develop throughout life. I mean, that helps you determine whether this garment you're buying is sustain. I mean, is timeless or not. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. So before we close out, I would like to give you the opportunity, if you would like to add anything else to this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I think I said it all, but I would just like to stress on the role of international organization like WTO and the United Nations and the European Union, that it is really like the task of these organizations to make people aware of the power of their decisions. Yeah, they because people like don't really feel that they have the power. It's always they feel that like, okay, this is what is being offered. I will just buy whatever is being offered, the cheapest thing. But I think people have to understand, first of all, understand the impact, the environmental impact of the industry. This is something very essential because I mean it's a cross-cutting issue that has nothing to do with the garments that I'm buying, but it has to do with everything that I'm buying. So I think that that making citizens in this part of the world aware of the environmental aspects and and how these environmental aspects are being affected by their decisions is something very important to touch base.
Actually, thank you for bringing up that point. I think, we definitely do need to, as organizations, bring more awareness to the general public that, a new piece of clothing or garment that you purchase is not just, that. Like, there is so much more to it. How were the workers that created this garment treated in the making of this garment? Where was this created? Where was it shipped from? All of these different things that go into it. So thank you for bringing that up. And like, I definitely agree that awareness raising, especially in the region, is extremely important in order to help influence a larger change overall.
I agree, yeah.
So I would like to thank you once more, Waleed, for joining us.
Thank you, Reem. It was my pleasure. Thanks.
Thank you so much. So I think it's clear that each of us, from consumers to corporations, like, we all have a role to play in transforming the fashion industry into one that respects and values every person in the supply chain. Again, huge thanks to Waleed Osman from Women Innovation Foundation for sharing his insights and helping us understand the power of ethical fashion choices. So I would like to tell all of our viewers, please stay tuned for our next episode as we continue to explore the important issues impacting women and sustainable development around the world. So I would like to remind everyone, fashion can be way more than what meets the eye. It's a powerful tool that can drive change when it's done right. So until next time, keep making informed choices and advocating for a positive impact. Thank you.